Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got into this situation. Long story short, everything was supposed to go well, and it did not at all go well. I got the wrong dye for my project, the other half of my project didn't dry as fast as I needed it to, I spilled black dye on the cabinets of a home that does not belong to me, and I dropped part of my dinner on the floor. And so in a very last minute attempt to throw together a video this week, I resorted to turning to the wheel of redrawing my childhood characters and decided to roll me a character. But not that character. I don't have the energy to tackle Noelle today. I apologize for cheating and re-rolling, but I could not. This is a special character. I couldn't draw her. So instead, I rolled Juno with the general aesthetic of dark academia and the bonus detail of a dark purple and dark green color palette. So in case anyone is new to this series, because it's been a while, I am redrawing all of the characters I designed as a child. Now this particular set of characters on the wheel are woefully underdeveloped characters of a weirdly specific regional importance on this big map that I made in my elementary to middle school years. And Juno is part of a group of characters that are or relate to celestial bodies. They all have animal companions, or at least they can maybe transform into animals. Hard to say. I've not drawn any of the animals unless you count the sketch that I did for Megriz's bird, but these celestial characters specifically come with an added bonus challenge of, but make them a fantasy D&D style knight. It's a very complicated and convoluted series, so bear with me. So Juno in the original drawing is pretty standard in terms of appearance for my childhood drawings. I think her most defining feature is her hair. It has a very warm orangey red color, and she has these very pretty fluffy bangs as well as very long hair. And as far as this specific part of the series goes, I've done a lot of changing hair, so I wanted to try and keep the changes to a minimum this time. But instead of the very deep side part circa 2012, I gave her a middle part and some curtain bangs to modernize her look just a little bit. I also gave her very thick brows and lips that aren't very overlined with a very defined cupid's bow, because I see a lot of that when looking at pictures of dark academia makeup, so I wanted to reflect that in her face. Now the armor had a lot of different influences because this was kind of where I planned to bring in most of the dark academia aspects, but since I was given very specific jewel tones as a color palette, I couldn't rely on the browns and beiges and creams to hold up the dark academia part of the drawing, so instead I did my best to mimic a lot of the shapes that you see in dark academia outfits. There are a lot of belts, a lot of tucked in shirts, A-line skirts or wider cut dress pants, graceful sleeves, and turtlenecks. Another thing that is very important to the dark academia aesthetic as a whole is the romanticization of studying and the arts and classic literature, because the only way our generation knew how to cope with the pressures of school was to say, yeah, study, but make it fashion. So the other half of the thought process that went into this was looking at traditional art of Joan of Arc for her general posture and form, and also making my armor pieces be simpler in shape, but with some of the traditional filigree and imagery engraved in it, which you don't see in the sketch yet, but it'll show up later, like a lot later. We'll talk about it then. And here I start putting in my flats and experimenting with some cut crease makeup that made her look really cross-eyed, and I knew that I wanted to do some dark, cute makeup, but I didn't know how, so I procrastinated by putting in the rest of the flats. And then I was looking at the hair and the purple I had chosen and her face shape, and it was in that moment that I realized that I accidentally drew Chappell Roan, specifically in like a combined but copper version of two of her outfits when she went to the VMAs, which, you know, I am not upset about it. Chappell is a very beautiful person, and it gave me an incredible reference for working on the makeup and her face, but like who does that? Like, explain to me how I took a character I drew when I was like 13 and a historical figure and a fantasy concept and two randomly rolled design prompts and ended up with a real life recreation of a person at a very specific point in time. Like, make it make sense. What? How? But because at this point I had started looking at pictures of Chappell Roan for reference, I think I did a better job than usual rendering this face. Faces have a lot of little flat planes and textures that catch light in different ways, and a lot of artists, including myself, tend to understate these planes, which is totally fine because oftentimes that's a stylistic choice. Lately I've been trying to make a conscious effort to push the shading and contrast in my work, but because I am often a little unsure of how the light hits the little pockets in the face, I have a tendency to sort of avoid rendering those shadows, but since I was looking at a reference this time, I had a way better idea of where to place highlights and shadows, and Who could have possibly foreseen that outcome? Who could have known that looking at a reference is good? So let's talk about Juno, but the asteroid, not my character. So Juno is one of the 20 largest asteroids in our asteroid belt, and it is estimated that Juno alone contains 1% of the total mass of the entire belt. It was discovered in 1804 by a German astronomer named Carl Harding, and initially because of its size, it was considered to be a planet, but about 50 years later, it was reclassified as an asteroid and is now only considered a minor planet. It is also documented as the third asteroid to be discovered. So, you know, if you ever think about things in our solar system losing their status as planets, just know that Juno walked so Pluto could run. Juno, the asteroid, gets her name from the Roman goddess Juno, who is possibly more well known as her Greek counterpart, Hera. Juno's roles in Roman religion are very diverse and also pretty highly debated by historians and scholars. The consensus that they come to is that she is deeply connected with eternal usefulness, vitality, and energy. She has connections with the moon, protecting various cities, cycles of renewal, fertility, femininity, marriage, but also war and politics and regality. Wikipedia specifically states that the reason for the debate over interpretation of her role are due to the, quote, multiplicity and complexity of her personality, end quote. To which I say, she's just like me for real. But I love all these concepts and strong women coming together to really flesh out who Juno is in this new interpretation of her. An artist like Chappell Roan, a protector and queen like Juno, a commander and leader like Joan of Arc, with royal colors and academia behind her design. This is just a recipe for a good character. She's an icon. She's everything I've ever wanted to be in life. I think my other characters in the Celestial lineup are a lot more carefree and colorful and fun and, dare I say, impractical, but Juno has completely transformed in a way that I was not expecting at all, and I love this for us. Also, I do want to address that for all the practicality that I claim for this drawing, that is in comparison to the rest of my drawings. I have made two pretty egregious mistakes. Number one, I forgot to put a joint in her leg armor for her knee, or I put the knee guard just very, very high. Usually I like to think I'm pretty good at being aware of that stuff, like movement in clothing and armor, but I will say it's been a long week and I don't have a good excuse for that one. My big mistake number two is that the leather armor guard and single pauldron is a lot more indicative of armor belonging to an archer, and I gave Juno a sword. The truth about that is that I get really bored of drawing symmetrical armor, and so I just make it not the same and add a lot of texture so that I'm not drawing the same thing over and over. But my lower excuse is that she can use all kinds of weapons as a result of the multiplicity and complexity of her personality. Thank you very much. Throughout the plate armor, I originally had these rib rays in a sort of simple pattern because I knew I wanted a design, but I thought that I wanted it to be more simple and I didn't want to commit to anything difficult in the sketch. But I was seeing these gorgeous engraved breastplates when I was looking for references for lighting on armor, and it was not only so beautiful, it aligned very well with the overall character themes. So I have sun rays and flourishes and the figures of three powerful women. Who could they possibly be? I was really happy about that change. It's so pretty, and it was such a fun theme to carry out through the rest of the armor as well. I don't know if you can see it in the video because it was such a quick thing, but I felt like I had to change one last really tiny detail from the sketch. So initially I put a lot of cross pendants on her jewelry because I was originally thinking Joan of Arc, right? But I found out that the astrological symbol for Juno is a little scepter with a star on top, and in terms of space and design, it's very visually similar to what I originally had planned, while being more in tune to her namesake. Another thing that happens really quick in regards to the jewelry later in the process is that she's holding a necklace instead of wearing it over her armor like I originally had planned. The way that I drew her leather shoulder piece didn't suit the way that I wanted the chain from the necklace to sit, and I felt like it didn't make sense to put a necklace under the shoulder armor but over the breastplate because I felt like that's just trying too hard. So I wonder, maybe she's giving it to someone or holding it with some sort of religious or magic significance, or maybe it's just her own necklace that she didn't put on. I haven't decided. It is her symbol, so it seems to make sense that it's hers. Maybe it's a magic focus, or maybe a gift that she's giving to someone else. But I guess we'll see as time continues. As these celestial characters develop and as I draw more of them, the lore surrounding them tends to evolve quite a bit too, and it's just an ever-shifting story of these very powerful beings. And we have a lot more of them to cover, so like I said, we'll see. In general with this design, I'm very happy with how it looks. I really needed a win this week. Nothing major, nothing horrible happened. In fact, the weather has been gorgeous, it's spooky season, and I was relatively productive all week. But it's been one of those weeks where the lows are very low and the highs just don't counteract it in the way that they usually do. I was not getting proper serotonin in my brain, no matter how many tasks I pushed myself through. My comfort TV shows and YouTube channels just did not do it for me. So to be able to finish out the week with just a good, solid character design and what felt like a little bit of art progress was really good. It was what I needed at the end of the day. But enough of being too honest on the public internet. Meet Juno. I love her. I love her. I love her. I love her design so much. And I think younger me would have been obsessed with her. Not only is it probably the most true to the original design of the celestial characters, it's also in a color palette that I really loved at that age. And like, look at her. She just looks so cool. Who am I kidding? She is cool. But here she is with the rest of the characters from the celestial lineup. We have from left to right, Mirac, Cleo, Megrez, Vega, and Juno. What a crew. I do have a weird headcanon that Cleo and Juno are very aligned in goals, but they approach their problems with very different strategies and moral compasses, probably. I am so excited to see how this character lineup expands and also to see if my art style changes over the course of these character designs, but I guess who knows? Not me.